Recording clear. All right.
Wonderful. Okay, so as mentioned in the message a week or two ago, I've start at this point it's starting to become like more and more decisive that I'm gonna be number one in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And on the one hand, I'm really excited since that's kind of the main thing that I've been working towards pre-pandemic, and it's neat to hit that goal. But on the other hand, I have really no idea where to go from here. Like, there's
Yeah.
this vague idea of me wanting to like improve better for majors and to try and show people that Ness is a significantly better character than people give him credit for. But I don't know how to really put that in a way that's like productive towards targeted improvement, for example. So as a result, I've been more so just experimenting with different things the character has and just trying to figure out what's good and what's not. But at the same time, when I go to the locals, it feels like unless pretty much just Twisty, Silver, or Flarp are there, I'm not really taking it as seriously as I did at the start.
Right. You can kind of like autopilot and still do good.
Pretty much. Only at my worst do I feel like I lose to most people at the region at this point.
Yeah, that's a really. It's like a good problem to have, but it is a big like, oh, what now kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the best advice I can give for that specific thing is to, like you were saying, just get creative, right? It's if you can get creative and try to stay engaged against in sets with players that you don't normally lose to, instead of going into the autopilot, that's how you find little tricks to pick up. Or that's how you like make little matchup notes in your head that you can recall. Whereas if you just autopilot, win or lose, not much is changing.
Yeah.
So without doing, I don't take it to the level of like, oh, win without the A or B button, but like maybe try to do just kind of like experiment with stuff. And I know that's not super helpful directly, but that's one way to kind of keep the week to week interesting.
I I think I understand. So to put it in a more specific example for what would probably be applicable to me. For example, if I were to say try and practice using EX Fire in a much more productive way in like a bracket, or in another bracket I try to implement this one thing that I'm currently working on that's aerial magnet into grounded magnet pressure or something like that basically.
Yeah. Or even if it's not a specific new thing you're doing, you can just like pick your second choice in situations that you normally like to do the same thing. Like let's say you hit somebody with fire, right? And they're SDIing up. You have the option of going for a grab or going for a down air, but if they're SDIing up, the down air just grounds them. Maybe like just wait to see where they go. And even if you don't get a direct punish out of that, like try to kind of expand your perspective on going, okay, maybe when I need a big comeback or like if I'm reading a roll out of fire, that's an option I have now. That's another trick in the bag.
Mm-hmm. I've never actually considered it from that angle, honestly. Whenever I've thought about going into a monthly and trying out different things, or not a monthly, but a local tournament, it's always been like, oh, I've had this specific option in the lab for a while. Maybe I can see if I can find more practical uses for it. So, as I mentioned before, EX Fire was a big thing that I experimented with last week versus Kate, since I really wanted to see how it would work versus Ike, and she was willing to play her, or willing to play Ike versus me.
Yeah.
So, thinking about it from that perspective, it's kind of like taking, as you mentioned, a situation that I'm already comfortable in, but looking at it from a different perspective to be able to, I guess, figure out new ways to get. I think I approach this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're good. It's new ways. So like when you're down a stock or two, you're on last stock at a larger event, or like at a monthly, at something where your nerves are kind of kicking in, you have that experience, you have that trick of going, oh, I am comfortable, with multiple situations out of, again, let's say fire on hit, right? So if I need the big opening and I don't want to take the risk on the tech chase, maybe I just wait for the roll, or like you apply pressure in different ways. Or like another really common situation, let's say you get them to shield, right? Whether they CC shield PK fire or just like you just have them in shield with your movement and your threat zones. What if you just don't hit their shield? What do they do? How long does it take? What is their option based on character? What is the option based on like player habit? You can start like analyzing how your tempo changes things. You can start analyzing how like it's like a common analogy I use is, when two cars pull up to a stop sign at the same time and they start to go at the same time and then it just gets all funky.
Yeah.
Where is that fuse? How long do people stay in shield in that really weird situation? If someone's in shield and you're like just doing nothing and you shield before your option, does that get them to flinch faster? How can you really just like... You're not like, obviously you can't physically press the buttons on their controller, but like how can you convince them that you're going to do option A and then not do option A? So like shield into like back air, even though that changes nothing, it shows on the screen that you're feigning an option.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like when you see somebody crouching when you're in the air, you go, oh, I don't want to get CC'd, I need to change what I'm doing. So maybe if you, let's say, run past shield and they're expecting the back air, but then they see the shield, like, oh, I need to move, even though back air is still a threat, that takes a little more awareness and like, it takes a little more time to like, for your brain to get to that conclusion than it does the base instinct, oh, shield means not moving, I should move or do something first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure how I would word that or follow up, like how I worded my own words or how to follow up on that. But kind of thinking about that concept.
Like push your opponent's buttons, maybe?
Yeah. It's kind of like trying to make them think that I'm going to play a mix-up that I don't actually go for, I guess. And then being able to more safely react afterwards. So say, I don't know, first example that comes to mind. Let's say that I'm fighting a Marth and I get him into shield, and let's say that I'm spaced right outside, say, drift forward fair range. So, like, if I'm waiting in that situation right outside that range and let him just do the fair, then suddenly I have a bunch of other options that open up, because now instead of maybe trying to pressure his shield, get behind him with, like, a cross-up bear or something, then maybe instead I can go for something a lot meatier, like a mag up air to come in, or down tilt grab to catch his landing, or something like that.
Right.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, you open up, in some cases, bigger punish opportunities, but even in situations where they're not necessarily bigger, they're different. Maybe against Bowser, the like run through pivot back throw is a better option than than like mag up air. Or maybe against this player that never CCs, going for grabs is a bad idea, so you need to be able to kind of like be flexible with your pressure, and not just like numbers wise when they're in shield or something, but like how does you moving convince them to stop moving? How does your movement and your buttons convince them to do what you want them to do? Or at the very least convince them, how do you recognize that they're doing something and then punish them for it,
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of that is just experimentation. Like, the classic, the run through DJC Bear is really good if they're not going to move, if they're committed to shielding, if you think they're going to flinch. What if you just like run through and then short hop? Are they going to, especially with kind of the first instinct being, oh wait, Ness ran behind me, I should shield. What if you just let them run down the shield? What if you DJC fair at them? What if you magnet stuff? Like, I'm not saying that these are better, and I'm not trying to imply that you haven't like done this and that this is something you should be doing, but like, especially when you're in that position where you have you have that leeway, right? You have the mental energy to kind of like experiment and get a little funky with it in the such that you're local and still like not risk too much. You can always fall back on the like, okay, I know how to play against Kate. You know, I know her habits. I know this. I know that about Ike, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You have that kind of like safety net, I guess. So that lets you experiment in a now not absolutely risk-free zone, of course, because like people are people. They're not static objects, but
Yeah.
because of that, because they're people, because they'll adapt to what you do, that also lets you kind of like not like in a malicious way, that lets you test things out. If you're only autopiloting your events, your locals, then once you come across somebody that you don't have an autopilot for, it becomes a lot more scary. And then you start worrying about that, and that gets in your head, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess at the same time, that also leads into another thing that I was going to talk about, but maybe not now since we're having a good conversation. When I'm outside of like region, I feel like I tend to do a lot worse, not just because of nerfs, but because a lot of the time, I've already played a bunch of the people in Massachusetts a load of times. Like, I think I have 10 sets with Moto this season, 16 sets with Twisty, like 4 sets with Serb, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you just kind of start learning not just everything about their character and how they use them, but also like little quirks about their play that you really wouldn't be able to get out of region, for example. And I feel like I've also relied a bit on that a bit more than I should, honestly. Like, I think one example I've kind of noticed is that oftentimes whenever I'm fighting Shay, she's going to be a lot more defensive with Meta Knight and rely a lot more on dash dance as opposed to a lot of her other options like jump in air, run in detailed, run in CC detailed, that is. Just like Meta Knight grab and other options in that range. So suddenly I know that I can take the space, I can threaten it a bit more with something like a mag, and suddenly she's put herself in the corner. But once I went outside of region and I fought a different Meta Knight, specifically Boring Man, it's like, oh, I didn't have that anymore, and I don't know Meta Knight as well as I thought I did.
Yeah,
I just Shay a lot better than I did.
Right, you get good against Shay's Meta Knight, but Meta Knight in general, or you know Parker's Meta Knight, you're not like as confident in that because you are. That's kind of like another good problem to have, though. You're very good at that means you're good at picking up on player habits, on like the mind space of, oh, Shay's afraid of afraid of getting like overly aggressive and getting punished. I can use and abuse that.
Yeah.
The good news is everyone has those, even the most well-rounded players, because you can't think about everything, so you have to decide when you're playing a set. What am I gonna like? Oh, let's say it's Ness Meta Knight, right? It's the Meta Knight. What am I going to worry about? Because I can't worry about everything. So like, what am I going to use my time and my limited energy and my limited button presses in this match to prevent or to punish or to bait? You know, like that tells you a ton about a person, but it is hard to kind of separate the two sometimes. So when you like in Houston, right? There was one Meta Knight player back when we had locals all the time, and he would tech in place every like stressful time. He would tech in place. So every time somebody was getting a comeback against him, every time like he only barely got knocked down, he wants to get up and press buttons ASAP. And for that kind of thing, because that's not like it's not like he tech in place shined. Like it's not a Meta Knight specific tech in place. It's a lot easier to be like, oh, this player does this thing. But when it comes to using like the character attributes, like, oh, this player uses their character's speed and their character's down tilt in combination with how they feel against my threat zones with my character, it becomes like a lot. You got to be able to separate the you got to be able to put the person in the box separately from the character.
Yeah.
So like the on that topic of like playing a top player of a character you're used to, but only like one or two players, being able to put people into box. I'll explain my terminology in a second. When I say put someone in a box, I mean like, let's say you've never heard of this player and you need to play them. The first 20 seconds, what kind of player are they? Like, what stereotypical habits do you expect from the way they're moving? Now, if it's a wolf going in with Nair, you're expecting the shine afterwards, right? If it's what's a good example? If it's a Peach, you're expecting like down smash. As you expand that to the players, you can get more general habits. Like, oh, if it's a floaty, they're probably not going to be super aggro. If it's a fast faller, they might want to like push out of the corner with a really good ledge dash. And as you kind of are able to separate the character habits from the player habits, when you can refine the boxes, you can be, okay, this is a Falco that likes to press B. This is a Falco that likes to like dare shine pressure. This is a Marth that swings. This is a Marth that dash dances. And a lot of that is just experience against those play styles, because it's hard to know if you're putting, to use Shay's Kirby or Shay's Meta Knight. It's hard to know if you're putting Shay in the Meta Knight box, or if you're putting Meta Knight in the Shay box, based on their habits, because you only have the like one or two characters of consistent practice. Because this game is just too big, too many characters to like. Like every region might have a Nest, but they all play differently, right? Most regions don't have a Mewtwo, so even if your region has one, it's like who knows what the other Mewtwo is going to play like. So I think for PM especially, that's a lot of like middleman you can cut out. If you can practice, like, it's hard. You can't really do this at locals against players you know, which is rough. But maybe the next time you're playing like net play against people that you don't really like play with constantly, try to put them in box. Like say, oh, they tech left once out of the corner. I'm just going to cover this until they don't, and then my box will be a little more accurate. Okay. I know that's really abstract and doesn't really fit 100% with Smash. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, totally. It's giving me a lot of new ideas now. I'm not entirely sure how to word, but like it's all swimming in my head now, I guess. But yeah, I think that this is definitely going to be something that I try to do a lot at Shipwrecked.
Yeah.
One of the main things that I tried to do after feeling like I underperformed at Undertow was that afterwards I tried to get as much diverse experience as possible through money matches of everyone of different like skill levels of like and of different matchup experiences that I've had. So I think that was already something that I was gonna do at Shipwrecked, but now I think I have like a more concrete thing to try and focus on when I do that, and I think that'll be really helpful.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you say diverse experience, right? Like, okay, this is going to sound insane. Hear me out for just a second. I think playing jank modes with character, like where both players are playing random, in some ways, in some ways, can legitimately increase your kind of preparedness overall. Like, you'll never need to prepare for Fox Laser to freeze you, of course, but like, it'll put you in positions you're not comfortable with. It'll get you thinking, especially for like characters that are a little specialized, like Ness, right? You'll be able to see, oh, when Marth's here, I want to swing. If I'm Marth and I'm here, right? Like, I hadn't thought about it from this perspective before. Or like, oh, as Wolf, I can go far off stage, so against Wolf players, I'm going to threaten it because they're aware of it, but against people that don't play Wolf, I can just hit them with Rar Bear, right? As an instance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of the same way you play Ness against people who actually know how to play Ness very differently than you play Ness against people that don't. And that's not like a bad thing. That's not like that's not shade against anyone who plays or doesn't play Ness, but like, you know what you can and can't get away with. You know you don't have to play, like, you know that they know that they know that you know, etc.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets really fun too. Because then you can just go back to the dumb stuff. Like, not the dumb stuff, but like the base level stuff of like, I wanna throw PK fire, right? And you can just throw it because they know that you want to throw PK fire, and they're giving you the credit that you're not going to do it. And then they're like, "Oh, I gave them the credit, but they did it anyway."
Okay, I definitely 100% like know that feeling. I felt like when I was at what was the most recent New York Monthly? When I was at the most recent New York Monthly, I felt like I was doing that a decent amount versus someone like Kais, because like the first time we played before that event, I 3-0'd him when like I had a bit more practice than he did. So then like coming into this event, it was like, oh, Kais is a lot more warmed up now. How are we gonna do against each other? And it did feel like at times he was letting me get away with a lot of more aggressive habits as a result. Like say when I'm up in the air, really high up, and I'm recovering from like, I don't know, a DI Charizard up throw. A lot of the time I would do something like approach with a full drift forward fair as I was coming down, and Kais would just get caught by that. It was like, I know that most people wouldn't be letting me get away with this, and yeah. But yeah, eventually he did catch on because I just never changed, which I think this is a good time to segue into the next topic, because eventually, especially when I don't have a game plan versus a character already like prepared, I feel like a lot of the time I start getting nervous and over relying on pretty much the same things and going really hard autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot is a very double-edged sword because at longer events especially, autopilot will save you so much energy. And that lets like, I separate it with like head and hands, right? Autopilot is when your hands are playing. And that can open up your eyes, that can open up your mind to like think about and observe more closely. It's like when you're moving around with Ness, right? Like doing DJC Fair, you don't have to think about it, which is great because it'd be so hard to play if you had to think about every movement option you did, right?
Yeah.
But there's like a perfect middle ground based on player too. It's not like against everyone you're gonna have to autopilot the same amount, but there's a middle ground that you have to like find on a player by player basis where how much can I get away with not thinking about? Because the more I can get away with not thinking about, the more like my hand can play the game, the more I can think about, oh, last time we played, right, like Kais didn't know the matchup. This time he's looking for the stuff I was doing so I can get away with fair. I can get away with the level 1, very straightforward, immediate response stuff. And I think that is also where, at least in my experience and the experience of the people I've talked to, that's what comes out when you get nervous. Your hands play. Because like they make more mistakes than normal for sure, but when you're nervous, you can't long-term stay in that mindset of, okay, I'm thinking about their options and I'm thinking about this, because that takes a lot of energy, and if you're nervous, you're thinking about something that's not the game by definition.
Yeah.
So that's when your hands just go like, boss, anything up there? Like, and just start doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that experimenting with weird options will help a little bit with that, in the sense of kind of like, if something weird does come out, like if you just kind of, that you don't intend, you're a little more aware of it. Like you're not only used to the 8 nest situations that'll ever come up, you know?
Yeah.
Like what if you up throw a floaty at 80? On accident? On purpose? Who knows? Maybe it's Luigi and it's like a legitimate possible option. Who knows? But like a really good way of kind of like improving your like nervous play is to just kind of, obviously outside of just not being nervous, because that's the most useless advice in the world.
Yeah.
Is to kind of like try to hyper focus on something. Let's say if you're able to consciously realize you're nervous, start asking yourself questions about your opponent, questions about not yourself. because at least in my experience, that can kind of like spiral, and I'll start thinking like, oh no, I've made so many mistakes. I'm being so straightforward. Oh no, it's the third time I've teleported. But start asking yourself like, what are they doing? Because you have to be able to see what they're doing to judge whether it's good or bad. So you won't get distracted by thinking, oh, I'm placing value on what they're doing in any capacity. Start thinking about, oh, like literal physical observations. Like, oh, what percent am I at? What percent are they at? How many stocks do we have? What stage are we on? Like, anything to just kind of like get you to think about the screen. Oh, what is this? Get out of there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because it's...
Extend on this a bit. Let's say I don't know a matchup at all. There's no one anywhere near me that I can get practice from. Let's say I'm fighting, I don't know, Game & Watch, I guess.
Okay.
And there's this one strategy that I had versus that Ellipsis was doing versus me, where I didn't know the answer to at all, or couldn't find any answer to at all, and just felt kind of lost in, and that ended up also giving me a lot of nerves. What can I do in situations where it feels like I haven't practiced this matchup, this situation, I haven't thought about this situation ever because I didn't even know that it existed, and now I'm getting
It's a comeback?
my opponent's coming back on me, and
Gotcha.
suddenly I don't know what to do, and everything is falling apart. So what can I do with that kind of thing?
Again, obviously the most useless advice in the world is just be more prepared, but that's impossible with how many characters are in this. Like, if it was Melee, maybe you could say that and get away with it, but, like, you could legitimately play Yoshi, Wolf, Peach, Ice Climbers all in one day. And those are... Being as prepared for all of those would be crazy, because it's so region-specific. Because even among those, like, show me two Yoshis that play the same, right? So when you're getting hit by new stuff, I think again, a little bit of the answer is, again, don't place judgment or value on what you're seeing. Don't say, oh, I'm losing to this. Oh, this is beating me. Oh, I'm not doing well. Like, but instead just try to observe. Go, okay, what is Ellipsis doing? Is this a true combo? Is this conditional? And this is where, at least if you need it, you can just take the momentum on the Angel plat. Because sometimes it'll just be like, oh, up throw 9, I forgot, right? And you know what it is, but you just kind of slipped. But when it's the funky stuff, like, oh, I never even considered that the landing hitbox of up air might be good, right? Like, you can take time on the Angel plat. You can take time, depending on the specific confirm you're doing, you can take time as you're, like, playing. So whether it's like, oh, I know back throw kills here, I can just back throw and for a few seconds think, or you can just like dash dance and play, like you can just like pretend to approach and just run around a little bit and think about it.
Okay.
That also helps. That kind of thing helps if you have like a very diverse experience set, both either as or against the character. So like let's say you've played Game & Watch, and you've never thought about using like the pan hit of bacon for like that grounded knockback, grounded stun thing, or the landing hitbox of up air, but you know what's coming after that. Like, just because you got hit by something weird doesn't mean the Game & Watch suddenly has a whole new combo tree. Like, he's still going to look for like up B nair. He's still going to look for up throw nair, probably up throw up B nair, something like that. It's been a while. It's been exactly since P+ release since I played against Game & Watch.
Up throw nair works. Thankfully, not at kill percents. Up throw up B nair. Very weird interaction. You have to SDI a certain way that I can't. I don't know how to vocalize.
I think it's based on his up B direction, right? Something weird.
I think so. And like sometimes you gotta do like in front of him. Sometimes you like go behind. Sometimes you're just in a situation where like it's spaced just right, where like it pops you up and you can't really do much at all.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I felt in my limited Game & Watch experience.
But yeah, that kind of stuff. you can either work like forwards to what you do know, like thinking, oh, like I was saying, like, oh, I don't know the full suite of what landing hitbox of up air does for Game & Watch, but I know if I get hit by it, I know what's coming next. Like, it's not like he's gotten new aerials if he hits me with landing hitbox of up air. Like, you can kind of ground yourself on what you are familiar with, or you can work backwards and ground yourself with what you're familiar with, going like, oh, maybe up throw, up B in air. I don't know how to SDI that, but I know that he has to grab me to up throw me, so I can just kind of, you can kind of focus on something you do know. And that's another thing, though, of like, eventually you are going to have to, like after the set, eventually you're going to have to learn to like understand that more, because the players, especially if you play the same player again, will kind of, you play Ness. You know when someone doesn't know how Magnet works, and you just start using Magnet and you 3-0 them. And then the next set, that's the first thing you do, and you just see if they know how to work with it yet, and if they don't, you just 3-0 them again.
Yeah.
Almost every character has at least one of those things where it's like, okay, did you pass the test in the week since we played, right? And if you didn't pass the test, and I can just keep doing this.
Okay.
So that's something that it's not super like comforting at the time, but for the most part, it is. If you're getting hit by something super funky, there's a reason you haven't seen it before. Unless it's like a wild character, like a truly, like if it's handoffs from ICs, that's just, you've seen it before, you understand the situation. But if it's like some weird thing that's like, is that an infinite? That feels like an infinite. There's a reason you haven't seen it. It's either not as good as it seems, it's hella hard, like flop lock or something like that, right? Or there's some anime caveat why they can't always use their full power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is really helpful. I think that's what I wanted to talk about a lot with like nerds figuring out what to do in terms of not knowing what exactly the opponent's doing or why they're doing it, how to deal with those specific situations where I'm suddenly like autopiloting in ways that make it in like exploitable ways as opposed to like productive ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really have any other questions regarding this.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's see. I do want to bring up just you had mentioned that you had a lot of very high expectations of yourself, and that is kind of like biting you in the butt sometimes.
Yeah. So I kind of already like thought about that a lot during my like spare time, and it definitely felt like something that was triggered by me being seeded top 8 for Undertow, because that just suddenly gave me like a lot of doubts about myself and like, am I actually this good? Am I like, it's imposter syndrome basically.
Mood.
But like that that ended up carrying over a lot of it, because I was kind of using the major to have it be like the end goal, as like, this is what I should be training for, this is where I can like show myself, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But then once I got there, all those expectations ended up just collapsing in on myself, and I basically go 0-2 in the main bracket. I think that technically I beat Zubat, but he ended up DQing like not long after the first game, so it really didn't even feel like I actually won the set. So after that, I ended up basically spending about a week or two kind of thinking about what I was really going to major for, and I ended up deciding that it would be a lot better if I just treated it as just like another stepping stone to like learning everything there is about Ness.
Yeah.
For example.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That if your only goal is to win, or if your only goal is to like make top X, or if your only goal is to get to the major, it's a lot of like existential crisis, frankly, once it happens.
Yeah, honestly.
It's like, oh, I made it to main bracket. Why am I doing this? So if you can kind of like shift your expectation, like shift your long-term goals, that can really make your expectations of yourself a lot healthier. So instead of like you had just said, your goal is not to your goal for an event might be to make top 8, but your overall goal is, hey, I want to just know everything about NES. I want to play more PM. Because that's the biggest reward, especially for PM. Good lord, but that's the biggest reward that winning gets you. You get to play more of the game because it's not something especially at regionals and larger. It's not something you have access to all the time. It's majors are temporary. That kind of that game 5 last stock just heart attack. That thrill that I imagine a lot of people in the community love and hate. That's not something you can just get on command. You have to work for that. You have to go get that. Mm-hmm. And that's a reason to keep playing no matter how long you keep playing. Same thing with learning everything, mastering your character. Really, really getting into the nitty-gritty of everything NES can do. And to throw back a little bit, I think picking, I wrote it down here, it's get funky and experiment with new, weird, and even the bad options. Bad options are good sometimes. Mm-hmm. So, being able to definitively say, oh, with my literal years of experience at top level, with my, with all of the practice I have, with all of the pure time and energy I put into this game, I am a master of my character. I'm a master of my craft. That is a really good motivation. Because that's something that can't be taken away from you. I know when Saber he was having a very bad couple of weeks because the PM events had gotten canceled. And Main Stage had basically, at least they got out in front of it, but Main Stage had gotten basically, hey, we're not going to have this, but we're not going to let them cease and desist this. He was feeling super down because he felt everything he had put the work in for the last 4 or 5 years just didn't matter anymore. Mm-hmm. Because, and this is a very different thing. This is a life thing as opposed to a competitive video game thing, but it's easy to kind of get caught up in the goal to, like you were saying, the kind of the what now that you're at the top of your local mountain, what's next? But if your goal is, if that's a stepping stone, if your goal is to hey, where's the highest mountain? Hey, how high can I get on the highest mountain? And if that's the highest mountain, how can I find a higher one? If your goal is to just increase elevation, once you get to the highest mountain, once you get to the top of your mountain, that's fine. That doesn't go away. And that's an issue I had a lot after Salty Ones. I had never really thought about the long term because it seemed so unrealistic. About oh shit, I've achieved my goal? Question mark? And God, that destroyed me. Frankly, that was one of the worst things to happen to me was winning that tournament, which is the most first world privilege thing that I could possibly say. But the only reason I really played competitively anymore was to not let my friends down and to basically play the hero. And God, that is a kick in the head when that doesn't turn out the way you want it to. That's that unrealistic, unfair expectations on myself that just crush me. So I think, gosh, I am, in case you haven't noticed, I am awful at rambling. But
I'm getting a lot out of this. Don't worry about it.
Okay. See, everyone's telling me that, and I have to believe them, but I don't have to like it. But to get back to this, it's if your goal is not just to win the tournament or to to phrase this, if your goal cannot be taken away from you, then I think that's a good long-term goal. Mm-hmm. So I think something mastering this character, understanding this game deeper than I would have ever thought possible. For short-term and even medium-term goals, I think staying objective, staying achievable is, something you can observe and see. Even though it's against other people being oh, I want to be ranked number 1 in my region, That's a really good like medium term, short term goal. But saying, "Oh, I want to be number one in the world," that's not just because that's harder and will take more time doesn't make it a long term goal. Because that's still an external thing. It's based on your external, like internal mastery of the character, your internal abilities and skills, but anything where you're comparing yourself to somebody else is gonna go away eventually. Mm-hmm. So being able to get that kind of satisfaction, that internal motivation of I want to master Ness. I want to know why. Like, I want to know if there's ever a situation where just, maybe I can shield poke if I just charge down smash, right? Maybe that's a situation where if they're convinced I'm going to bear them and their shield is bad or their shield is low, I could get something else here, right? It might not be good. There might be a reason that most Nesses don't do it. It might have been done in 2013 and everyone kind of decided that it was bad, but like, but it's bad. Because you've tried it, you've succeeded at it, and that's yours at that point. Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry for kind of like dragging the expectations and goals thing back, but this is something that I probably overshared a little bit, but this is something that I struggled with for a long time, and like, especially since you had mentioned it, I don't want to see other people struggle with this if I can help it. Because it sucks. It sucks because it's the most internal beat up thing too. It's like, why am I sad? Huh.
It was rough. After like I was eliminated in Undertow, I basically I just sat down and felt sad for like 30 minutes or something like that, and that was just rough.
Yeah, it just sucks. Don't do that. Don't be sad.
Yeah.
But to kind of get back into the objective a little bit, I think setting those goals of I want to place at top X, or I want to even like I want to play my best consistently, or my best that day consistently. Is a good like goal for a day, goal for a short or medium term. Because you do need those like objective, like, I made X place. I may have gone 0-2, but I'm happy with how I played. Because it's not like that's one of the things that is great and sucks about competitive things. It's not always up to you. Like there's always something you could have done different, yeah, but some days your best just isn't enough. Whether that's prep or whether that's just something else going on in your head or going on in your life. Like it's not like a fatalistic thing. It's not like you're ever fated to lose, but by the same token, it's a 2-player game. It's never 100% in your control, and that's the cool part about it. So just being able to separate yourself from your objective results. That sounds really weird. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes full sense. And honestly, I guess I can get a little personal here. There was a very long time where I attached basically everything to my results, and that ended up being very harmful for me in the long term. So I have had the chance to rethink my relationship to the game and a lot of the goals that I wanted to set for myself and actually achieve, and ended up working through that. But it's definitely something that required a lot of work, I guess.
Yeah, it takes focus, and it's you learn a lot about yourself.
100%.
Yeah, that's another reason why it always, outside of the let's say 2 Lucas players are going to the same tournament, which one is better for seeding purposes? I don't really like the conversation of who is the best X player, because the characters, especially the brawl characters and the buffed melee characters, they're just so different. Like, God, that's my biggest pet peeve. Is when people will kind of just Fuzz said this, so this must be popular Mewtwo opinion, or this must be the correct Mewtwo opinion. Like, no, I am dog shit at 80% of this character. I F smash significantly too much. You should not only watch me. There's so many cool people doing so many cool things that, like, it doesn't. I don't have to be the best player. Like, or it's not about me, but like, one person doesn't have to carry the character and be the best at everything. So that kind of helped me kind of get out of my own head, in that sense of I'm not the best Mewtwo player. I'm a Mewtwo player, and I F smash too much. I'm the best F smasher. I'll take pride in the dumb stuff, 100%, but Smash, even PM, but it's not near as bad as other games, but even PM is very, like, because it's so individualistic, it's very easy to slip into, like, oh, you know, Switch is the best Wolf player at everything. I'm not going to bother with, and not even consciously, but I'm like, oh, I'm not going to watch the other Wolf VODs. I'm just going to watch the Switch Wolf VOD against this matchup. I'm going to watch the Malachi Sheik VOD against this matchup, the Malachi Peach VOD. And you miss out on a lot of really cool stuff when you only watch the people who... How do I phrase this? I'll elaborate in a second, but when you only watch the people, who are successful at the top level, you miss out on a lot of that new, weird, and bad stuff. And it sounds counterproductive to want to watch the bad stuff, but it can kind of... it can be really illuminating. Like, oh, this is why Nesses don't forward throw Spaceys at 20 into the stage. Stuff that kind of stuff is obvious, but like in more extreme stuff, like, oh, this Ness is doing up tilt and they're not getting an extension at this point. So that means even if this Falcon player doesn't realize it, the Falcon player has carte blanche to kind of just ignore up tilt here. Because that's bad, I need to find a different solution. Maybe a different solution is, spaced F tilt to beat out the Nair, or like to contest the Nair. And at high percent, especially with Shuffle, maybe that'll like knock off stage. That'll be, it doesn't have to be great. It just has to be new and weird, especially with the way DI works. God, I love Smash. Like, it doesn't have to be good for someone to lose to it. Melee Yoshi, or actually Melee Yoshi's decent. Melee Pichu's a good example. Like, people lose to Melee Pichu all the time for perfectly valid and perfectly invalid reasons. Okay, that is... Oh, God, I'm so sorry for... I think it was Kingley who said Jasper is the most thoroughly engaged, distracted person when they talk about Smash. Like, a really nice way of saying ramble.
That's exactly how I like learning, though. It's, like, really good for me whenever I'm, like, just in a conversation, and sometimes it just, like, go off on whatever topic, and, like, not even just, like, explore that topic, like, in full depth, but just, like, I don't know, talk about it, I guess.
Just hit a lot of bases.
Yeah, and just, like, repeat it over and over again, and that just hammers it into my head really hard.
If you need rambling and repetition, boy, you have come to the right person.
Wonderful. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to hit up on. I guess, like, we have, like, 10 minutes left, or 7 minutes or whatever.
I'm not, like, watching the clock. You're good. Like, if I were to watch the clock at exactly the hour, I'd be like, nope, conversation's over, goodbye. That'd be the most hypocritical bullshit.
I don't know, maybe you have someone else that you're, like, talking to, or, like, just want to enjoy your night. I don't want to hold you longer than the time.
Believe me, if I would... I don't ramble about things I don't like talking about. You're good.
Okay, gotcha.
Plus, this is actually the first night it's come up, but I have another session after this. I explicitly told them, because they're my friend too, so they know. Like, it's not like someone just messaged me on... Okay, that sounded like it was... I almost said subtweeting. I need to learn more words. That sounded like I was trying to like be subtle about like, oh, it's not like someone just messaged me on Twitter asking for coaching. But like, they've known me for like, I think about 2 or 3 years now. So they know that I ramble. They know that I run late. I told them I'm probably going to be late. So it's all good.
Okay, gotcha. Oh yeah. I guess maybe just like brainstorming what might be a good goal for Shipwrecked specifically might be a nice way to wrap this up. Because I kind of don't know what I want to get out of the event, honestly. Or if I want to get anything particular out of the event. So I'm kind of wondering how that might play into basically everything that we've talked about today.
For a short-term goal for Shipwrecked, I think something that could be an interesting goal is to hit somebody with something they haven't seen before.
I like that.
Yeah, that's definitely like that won't be a permanent goal, of course, because as you keep doing that, you're gonna get someone who posts it to Reddit and be like, "Okay, this is bullshit. How did this work? This is stupid." Like, jokingly. And there's obviously a finite number of actions you can take. Blah blah blah. You know, monkeys in a typewriter, but
Yeah.
like, just surprise people. That's really fun too. When you even out of the corner of your eye, you can see them like, what?
Okay, something that like kind of fits into that, just like going a bit off topic, that kind of fits into that kind of thing that I was doing a bunch in not a bunch, but a couple times at the New York Monthly, was sometimes I would just like be in the middle of a combo and then just go for like PK Thunder 2. And then just try to chase them with that. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not sure where this is gonna go. I'm not sure if I'll hit them or not, or if this will be productive at all. But like,
we'll find out.
yeah.
That's exactly what I was talking about. Like, get weird with it.
Yeah.
Life is too short to only have 3 combo trees. Or combo routes. Technically, the combo tree is the big one, but blah, blah, whatever. Semantics.
Yeah.
Like, there aren't enough PM events already. So, like cutting yourself off to only, like... It's one thing if, like, you're in a tense situation and it's, like, a really serious game and you need to, like, play at 100% and be like, make sure you get as much out of everything as possible. There's a time and a place to get weird with it. But, like... you'd be... When you're doing this, you'll be amazed at how effective it is. Like, if you're pressuring someone's shield and then you just stop, and a half second later they roll, it looks so weird. And the reason is because they've already decided to roll, and that can give you a greater understanding of the box to put that player in, that player's habits, maybe that character's habits, especially on characters who don't have great out of shield. Like, let's say Ike, right? Front-facing Ike. Like, if you just kind of put him in a weird spot, he'd probably do a weird thing. Especially because the weirder you get with it, the more likely that they probably haven't been in that position yet either. So you can like sneak a weird, like they might kind of go to their first instinct. They might pick a similarly weird option. Like, you know, when in Melee and PM, when there's like a really just scrappy match and both players just start mashing Nair out of hits on, like it's just a drag down mud fight at that point. Like everyone's flubbing inputs, nobody's wave dashing, everyone dash attacking everywhere. Like it can throw people off their game a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I feel like every topic you bring up, I just co-opt it into something else. I'm so sorry.
This is exactly what I want, though. Why are you apologizing?
Because I have awful self-confidence. I also have imposter syndrome.
Fair. I feel that so much.
Hell yeah. Oh, something didn't even occur to me. I think LTC pools got finalized, so we can look at your pool real quick.
Sure.
Just see, if nothing else, the characters that you're going to be up against. Anything you're unfamiliar with. Definitely not P+.
I remember that unless anything's changed, I believe I was fighting Tia to make it out of pools, and I fought her at the netplay event, and I'm not nearly as comfortable on netplay as I am offline, but it was versus Ike, and I still ended up, like, winning, I guess.
Yeah, if everything goes as seeded, you play... Oh god, that's really... I forget if Tia has Squirtle experience, but it's Tia versus Plate, you play winner of that. If everything goes to seeded.
played a Squirtle?
Played as a San Antonio Squirtle. Honestly, he has way more sauce. He's played for like a decade. He's not like super great, but sometimes, again, in the sense of getting weird with it, he has my favorite Squirtle combo. It is the most drawn out, like 3 tech traps against Lux Diddy back in like 2017. It is bonkers. I can link you the video it's in. Not so much to be like, oh, like this is the combo tree he'll be using, but like because his character is so weird and he's because he's not super comfortable getting to the next spot for the true combo, he kind of just has decided to start doing weird stuff and do like, oh, using just the turnaround animation to tech trap and like bring them center stage, using like reverse weak fair because getting slingshot nair to bear is hard. Like out of necessity, the innovation and the weird, even the bad options sometimes have niche uses. God damn it, I did it again. So your pool is either Ike or Squirtle, most likely. God.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable against Tia's Ike on net play, that'll probably transition well. Let's see. Let's just go ahead and hit show projected and see where top bracket is going to go.
That Lucky Bagels was the new projected 3rd seed for my pool.
Lucky Bagels is new projected 3rd seed?
Yeah, like for who I would realistically play in top 32.
Oh, it's the 3rd seed? Okay.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've run tournament. Lucky Bagels. Yeah, so for Bagels, you probably have noticed he tilts quite heavily when he does.
I did not notice that. That is something that I might be able to work with really well.
Yeah, if you can just piss him off, that's a pretty big advantage. And that's...
I'm rather good at specifically pissing Luigi's off. Both Arp and XYK have not been happy with how I played.
How are you going to pick goofy-ass Luigi and be like, why is your character like this?
You just wall them out with fair.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, no, I'm using fair and neutral, I'm using fair and punish, I'm using fair exclusively as the edgeguard tool. And it just works.
I remember back in like 2017, there was some Reddit post in the subreddit of like, hey, can somebody help me in this matchup? I'm the Luigi. If he just does rapid jab, literally, what do I do? Because I have to like almost double jump to get over him, and then he just stops doing rapid jab. And it was the funniest thing because like the first responses were like, idiot fireball, and then he was like, no, just watch it 3 minutes. Fireball gets beaten, and then it became a legitimate like, wait, what? Wait, yeah, how do you get around this? This is stupid. And like I think it was like F tilt, or like there was something you could do, but like it was only like 1 or maybe 2 options in the end. But yeah, I talked with Bagels at, I think it was, it wasn't Salty Ones. It was Salty. It's either Salty Ones or Bigger Balk. And we have the same kind of like anime protagonist syndrome. But his is a kind of a negative thing. Like I don't know how to explain it, but it seems like, and this is also years old at this point. I'm going off a very old box. So don't spend the whole week like investing too much into this. But it seemed like when he talked about like wanting to play well for his region, for his friends, for the character, it seemed like more of a weight than a desire, if that makes sense. So if that psychoanalysis of I love bagels helps you in any way, shout me out on Twitter. I don't know.
All right, will do.
Okay, I'll be at this event too. So if you want to hang out at some point, I'll be running around all Saturday, trying to run as many brackets and pools and commentary and stuff as I can. Mm-hmm. But if there's anything you need, honestly, there's only so much time of the day. I'd love to hang out, but I know myself better than to. I've already. I know on Saturday I'm going to be super tired, and at like 11 p.m. I'm just gonna go with the first friend group that has a car because I'm not. I hate me sometimes.
It's all good.
But yeah, if projected after that, you'll play lunch. But at that point, there's so much that's gone to seed there that's a minor miracle.
Yeah.
That's something to look at. I think in the gap between pools and bracket, especially because you're in H. Is there any indication of what waves these are in? Okay, you're in the second wave. Yeah. There'll definitely still be a fair amount of time between pools and top 32.
Yeah, I think that I don't remember if it was this tournament or another one. I think that there's a bit of a break between the pools and the top 32 where they're running doubles top 4. I can't remember.
Ooh, that's the play, frankly. If they aren't, it's not on their page, so okay. I'm not gonna hunt it down right now. But
maybe I was thinking of something else. I don't know.
I think if that's one kind of, like how in a platformer there are checkpoints, and you can it's a breathing moment. Even if you only have 2 or 3 lives, okay, if you can, once you make it out of pools, that's a checkpoint. You have some time to look at your next match, to kind of calm down, get some water, get some food. Once you make it to top 8, you also have that checkpoint of even if I'm in losers top 8, right? I have some time. I can look at my next match. I can just get out of my head. I can catch up with some homies. Whatever you do to just hang out, have fun, chill out a little bit, that gives you that opportunity. Because sometimes if you're in let's say right, your pool, right, you played your first match and now you're waiting on Tia plate because that's Ike's Squirtle, and you just have to wait. If you lose that and go immediately into another match, you don't have that breathing point. It's mainly a winner's issue with the breathing room, but it's still nice regardless.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so is there anything else you want to just hit real quick before we call it?
Nope. I think that's it.
Okay, sick.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the session. This was insanely productive, honestly.
I'm glad.
I'm really glad that we ended up having this hour-long chat.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I was kind of terrified. I was like, wait, it's just a conversation? Shit. Because normally if it's either playing and reviewing the set, I can focus on other stuff. I can there's objective things on screen. I can point and be like, oh, look at this. And this is just I have my notepad with 6 lines here, and we're going to talk about this for an hour. Oh, God. But yeah, I think I'm glad it went well. I'm glad it helped. Like I said, I'll be at Undertow. So if you want to talk about anything there, no promises that it will be immediately available, but if you need to talk about stuff or you just want to hang out, I'm down for sure.
All right, and in our next session, or in one of our next sessions, I'll try and make it easy on you and have a set prepared.
No, if you just want to have conversations, that's fine by me. It's an imposter syndrome fear thing. But now that, how many times have I mentioned oh, I'm rambling, I'm sorry, and that's what you wanted. Yeah. It's just gonna. I don't mind having the conversation. It's just I want to make sure that you're not just being polite and just saying oh yeah, this was nice, and then just But yeah.
Awesome, yeah.
Now I'm making it sound like I don't believe you. Damn it.
Okay, if you want to know my exact thoughts on the rambling is very, very able to help me take specific thoughts that are important, since you're repeating some things over and over again, and it allows me to compartmentalize them and make a lot more concrete thoughts regarding the stuff, as opposed to just say passively listening and having everything mentioned maybe in organized order, and then oh, maybe I forgot something really important at one point, or I missed something. So it is very productive for me.
That is the nicest way I've ever heard somebody say, Not to put words in your mouth, but it is basically just I have to really try to keep up with what you're saying, so I'm really engaged in the conversation.
Don't worry, it's not any problem.
No.
I lose focus kind of easily sometimes.
That's not just a you problem in this conversation, as the rambling has proven. But I'm twisting your compliment to make myself feel less uncomfortable, and that's a me problem. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyways, I will probably see you at Shipwrecked, and if we don't see each other at Shipwrecked, then I'll talk to you later.
Hell yeah. I'll pop this up on YouTube just for video hosting. I can keep it unlisted if you like, and then I can just send you the link.
I care not if you keep it unlisted or make it public. I think stuff like this is a resource that doesn't really exist enough of PM, and Drugged Fox lessons specifically, just watching those, I credit like half of my improvement to those. So if I could, I'd love to have that same resource for other people.
Wait, you didn't bring up Drug Fox before, did you? In our Twitter conversation? Okay, it was someone else. Someone else said that exact same thing. I think I will make this just public then. I'm just... The only reason I hesitate is because, like, it's one thing when it's, like, set review and it's like, oh, the action you took on your GameCube controller, risk-reward numbers, objectivity. But when it's, like, mentality... That, by definition, gets a lot more like personal, and it's like I would makes it sound bad. I completely would get it if like, oh hey, this is like me. This is a lot of this conversation is about me and my goals and my mentality, and that's personal, and it might make me uncomfortable. Like, so if you ever want me to take it down, or if you ever might change your mind or anything like that, then. Just shoot me a message. You don't have to give any context or explanation. I got you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so I will go ahead and hit the button. Bonk.